we believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Laura Thorson, and I'm so glad to be with you again on a Wednesday evening. We have Steve Tarani on tonight, a defensive instructor, author, and speaker, and many, many other roles and accolades that I will tell you about here shortly. We're going to be talking about some ways you can keep yourself safe without a gun, and so much more we're going to be going over tonight. But before we get to Steve, I have a few announcements, and I do have a quick tidbit of the week this week. I know I haven't done one of those in quite some time. So be prepared at the end of the show. We're going to have a live Q&A and be thinking of questions for Steve as we go. And if anything pops in your head while he's talking, just type it in the comments and we'll gather that at the end of the broadcast. So be ready for that. And then if you guys want to be notified about upcoming shows, the best way to keep in touch, or for me to keep in touch with you, is to go to defenders-live.com, go to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for those email notifications. I've noticed that the Facebook group, the Defenders Live Facebook group, is not very successful in reaching my audience. And so I want to make sure that if you do want to hear from me, that I can get in touch. So defenders-live.com, sign up for email notifications. And again, tonight we have the founder of Defenders USA, Adam Winch, in the background, helping me out behind the scenes. We're so grateful that he's here to help me. And you might see him pop on the screen from time to time randomly. You never know. But don't be alarmed if you see Adam come onto the screen. And before we get started with Steve Tarani, and I'll formally introduce him in just a minute, I do have a tidbit of the week this week, and it just came to me very shortly before the episode started. It might be a little bit half-baked, but it feels like a message that I need to get out there. And so let's just see how this rolls. So first of all, I want to talk to all of you beautiful people watching tonight. I don't know who needs to hear this message, but I do want to ask you in the comments, type a yes, raise your hand if you're a hot mess. We're all a hot mess in our lives, right? I'm raising my hand right now because none of us are perfect and we all live messy lives. And that's okay because we are only human. Am I right? So there's the disclaimer before I get started. But, we all have struggles that truly only God knows about. And so for those of you who are out there, the ones who are struggling, the ones who are hurting, for all of you who are trying and coming up short, for all of you who are searching and seeking, to those of you who are tired and barely hanging on, to those of you who are working so hard and sometimes can't see the forest for the trees, I want to tell you right now, I see you. I see you. And here's what I want to tell you. A few things. First of all, there is always hope. Make a choice to see it. Make a choice to see hope. Not just see it, but feel it, because there is always hope. Choose to be grateful. And if you guys are watching right now and this resonates with you, tell me one thing in the comments right now, if you want to, that you're grateful for in this very moment. Choose to be grateful. And if all you can think of is one thing right now, that's fine. But always be thinking of things that you can give thanks for. Next, don't you ever give up. We need you. You can go further and you can do more than you ever thought possible if you hang on to the truth that you can. So don't you ever give up. Those voices that are telling you that you can't, they're lying. They're lying to you. So don't let fear control you, okay? And the truth is that you're here for a reason. You probably don't know the reason, and that's okay. You don't have to know the reason. You don't have to be in control of everything and know everything. It's not your job. But know that you're here for a reason. And here's what I want you to do in knowing that. Wake up every single day and do your very best. Just do the best you've got that day. Not the bare minimum, though. Not what feels good in the moment. Your true best. Show up and give your true best every day. And don't lie to yourself. And don't lie to others. And don't sell yourself short. Know that you're needed in this world and that you are loved. And just rest in that for now. The world will keep going and the craziness will continue, but rest in that stillness and that peace of knowing. So keep moving forward, one small step at a time. And I promise you, those baby steps will lead you to great places in time. I don't know why, but I felt like I was supposed to say that to you tonight. Whoever out there is watching, somebody out there needs to hear that tonight. So I hope this message finds you. All right, for what that's worth, off my soapbox, now let's get to Steve Tarani, the real reason why you're here tonight. So, Steve Tarani, professional educator, author, and keynote speaker, Steve Tarani has served in the U.S. defense, law enforcement, and intelligence communities for over 35 years as a respected subject matter expert in protection, firearms, and defensive tactics to numerous high and low profile federal agencies. Formerly sworn, Tarani is a former full-time CIA Protective Programs employee and was formerly on the staff of the U.S. Department of Energy, National Security Institute, Security Force Training Department at Kirkland Air Force Base. He served on the POTUS 45 pre-election executive protection detail and is a DoD and FLETC-certified firearms instructor who has been on staff at Gunsite Academy for over 20 years and is formerly an adjunct instructor at the SIG Arms Academy for over 16 years. Specializing in awareness-based training, Tarani is also the published author of 9 books and contributes monthly to numerous industry periodicals. That's a lot of credentials. Let's welcome the great Steve Tarani onto the show. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Laura. How are you doing tonight?
Great. So that was a somber way to start the show, I realize. But
No, it
yeah,
was
go ahead.
it was a sound message and a deep one, and I think very especially what's going on today.
Yeah.
I think it's more so than not.
Yeah. I think it's important. I also am really glad that you agreed to come on because I think that the information that you have to share with people also will be helpful in equipping them in their day-to-day lives. And I think that's part of your mission as well. That's what I see from talking to you. So I don't think there's a whole lot more to unpack in your background. That bio is pretty extensive. So I think pretty much everyone gets a handle on just the incredible level of expertise that you bring to the table. And I really want to dive in, especially for those people who, and we titled the show, I forget the exact title, but it was something to the effect of um, being able to defend yourself without a gun, because a lot of people that watch the show or will be watching this show aren't carrying. Maybe they don't want to for whatever reason. Maybe they can't. I don't know. But this type of information that you're going to be providing for us will be just a dipping our toe in the water of some of the resources that you have that's available for people. So let's talk about awareness-based training, because a lot of the training we're going to be talking about is awareness-based. What is awareness-based training? And then we'll dive a little bit more into some of the terminology as well, because I think that's important for people to know.
Sure. Yes. So awareness-based training is anything where you use your perception, your five senses, things like that you can input information from your immediate environment. And the training is how to do that, teaches you how to do that efficiently.
Hmm. Hmm. And so these are things we already possess. We already have the tools, so to speak. We just need to learn to develop the skill to use them properly to keep ourselves safe. So that's good. It's not going to require a ton of money to invest in different gear and all of that kind of thing. So that's helpful. Now, when you talk about awareness-based training, when I've heard you in the past, we've went over soft skills and hard skills. So can you explain to people the difference between those and why those two things are important?
Sure. So anything that's a hard skill requires your body. You're using physical force in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Appropriate use of force, uh, following rules, regulations, laws, etc., or department policy, depending upon who you're working for as well. And we, as civilians, are held to that same standard of appropriate use of force. So any application of force where it requires your body, whether it be hand to hand or firearm, impact weapon, edge weapon, whatever it may be, martial arts, whatever you may be using, a hard skill is what defines the usage of that force. When you use your body, you introduce the potential for a scale of injury because you're using your body. And that's what differentiates the hard skills from the soft skills. Soft skills are where you're not using your body. You're using your awareness. You're using your ability to perceive and solve a problem using your most powerful weapon, which is your brain box. And
That'd be a great title for a book,
that happened to be my 9th book, Your Most Powerful Weapon. Yes.
I have it
And
sitting here somewhere.
and that most powerful weapon does not require batteries. You don't have to recharge it. Doesn't need a license. Doesn't run out of bullets. So it's on 24/7.
How
You're awake.
convenient.
It's on. Yeah.
Right. Right. So that's actually really empowering to know that some of the best skills and tools that we need to keep ourselves safe, we already have those at our disposal if we know how to use them. So now we talked about soft skills and hard skills, and I just am like defining a few things here before we go on, because I don't want to get too deep in the conversation without people knowing what we're talking about. So when you talk about being, again, this is a hard and soft thing, a hard target versus a soft target, what are you referring to there?
Okay, so those are just general terminologies thrown around by various agencies. A hard target is someone who's very difficult. That would be if you were trying to look for, let's say you're from the predator's optic, from the perspective of a criminal or an opportunist. If they look at you and ascertain that, hey, that's an easy target, I'm going to put him on my list, my target list, because they seem vulnerable. They're not paying attention to their surroundings, whatever it may be. Then that will be considered an easy target. The opposite of that is if these criminals or opportunists are looking at you and they see that you're aware, you don't have your head buried in your phone, you know what's going on around you, you are possibly aware of them looking at you, then they see that as a much more difficult target, and they ask themselves the question, are there softer targets? And the answer is yes.
Yeah. And a good way to look at this too, sometimes I believe, is in the animal kingdom, right? Because there's predator and prey. And if you notice, the predator almost always goes after the weakest prey they can find, the easiest prey they can find. So unfortunately, it's no different with human predators. Is that true?
That's correct. We are
Yeah.
part of the animal kingdom.
Yeah. So let's talk about, before we get into some of the resources that you can provide people, I want to talk a little bit more about some things that we didn't get to the last time you were on the show. And since we're talking about predatory behavior, I'm curious to know, in studying that type of behavior and those pre-assault indicators, what is important for people to know, and how should they go about their everyday life when reading body language, and primarily what to look for in somebody that wants to do them harm?
So I would say the most important thing is I'll give you an example. We may have talked about this last time was, how many of us have ever looked at our watch to see what time it is and then looked at it again? Why didn't you see it the first time? You looked at it, you put eyeballs on it, but you didn't see it. And the reason is because you weren't there. Your mind was somewhere else. So I would say the most important aspect of utilizing your awareness or applying your awareness is to be mentally engaged with your environment. Yes, you can look at something, but if you're not there to register it, good information in, relevant information in, allows you to make good decisions. And if you're not taking in relevant information, then you're not there mentally.
Right. So let's say that you're engaged with your surroundings and you're actually not just looking, but seeing, not in a paranoid way, but just being observant of your surroundings, like at the gas station, for example. And besides using just your quote unquote gut instinct, which I believe women really have, and men do too, but women especially. Are there any physical signs like eyes or hands or posture or anything like that we can look for?
There are. It's very subtle, and it's specific to the environment and the situation. But I can sort of give you a general 30,000-foot views of that. Let's say you are at a gas station. We'll use your example. Is that person doing what a normal person would be doing at a gas station? Are they doing what you would expect someone to do? For example, plugging in their credit card or putting gas into their vehicle or buying something at the counter or something like that. If they're doing something that doesn't fit, it's an anomaly. It doesn't fit the picture. It doesn't fit the environment. That's an early warning sign as well. So that's one of the things you can look at. You set your expectations, what we call a baseline. What would be your expectations for that environment? So the expectations for a gas station will be different than expectations for a coffee shop, let's say, or a convenience store. But you would set those expectations before you walked in or before you entered the environment and observe those potential indicators that would tell you that, this is above that baseline.
And so if you're seeing something before it becomes a problem, then that's giving you an advantage of probably time and distance, I'm guessing. And those are your two favorite friends.
Yes, they are.
Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Because what do time and distance do?
So it's what we call the reactionary gap, how much time you have. So there's a formula. More time equals, there's actually a distance formula. And the more space you have is the more time you get. So more space equals more time equals more opportunity to solve the tactical problem. So the greater space you can create, the more time you're buying for yourself and the more opportunities you have to solve the problem. The converse of that is also true. Less space equals less time equals less opportunity to solve the tactical problem.
Exactly. So should we be aware of or expand perhaps our personal bubble, or what are your ideas on that? Because in America, we can be standing in a checkout line, like you can feel the guy breathing on the back of your neck some of the time you're so close to him.
Right.
It kind of makes you rethink that a little bit.
Right. So, you really are constantly observing, and I don't mean this in a paranoid way. I mean, a lot of people blur the lines between preparedness and paranoia. And this is a typical protective agent, very aware of his or her surroundings. They'll walk in somewhere and look at what are considered event indicators. That is, someone reaches for a doorknob, that event indicates that the door is going to open. Or differentiate that from what's called a threat indicator, where you notice that someone is above that baseline and they shouldn't be doing that here in this environment. That could be a potential threat. So an event indicator versus a threat indicator is another way you can tell that. Well, I like to use the word hear it, see it, smell it coming. The more time you have, the more opportunity you have to come up with a solution.
And the best thing about learning these skills is once you can literally practice this just every day. it is
Mhm.
not something that you have to go to a class, it's not like shooting a gun. It is just something you can bring into your lifestyle, your daily living. And now that you know about it, you can put it into practice. And you talk a lot about visualization too.
Mhm.
Scenario visualization is a thing. Is it true that it's a good idea, like if you're in a restaurant or something, to think about scenarios that could happen?
Sure. You always want to have some, I want to go, before I answer that question, I want to go back to what you said a moment ago about utilization of the soft skills. So the
Hmm.
more you use your soft skills, just like being in a gym, the more you use the muscle, or the more you hike, or the more you go running or do yoga, whatever it may be, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So soft skills is no different. The more you use your most powerful weapon, the more you use your soft skills, the lower the probability of you ever needing your hard skills. So the more you use your soft skills, the lower the probability of ever needing your hard skills. So as an example of that, we'll take your example. You go into a restaurant or something like that, and being aware of doors and small openings, hallways, things like that. Because if something happens, there's a fire or an explosion or gunfire, active shooter, something like that. Where's everybody going to run?
Mm, same
You know,
place.
right? So you're going to get a bottleneck. So maybe there's an
Right.
alternative.
Hmm.
In the U.S., all kitchens, it's the law. You have to have a back door in the kitchen, and that might be an opportunity. Get to the kitchen door because there's a bottleneck at the front door, or where's my next piece of cover or concealment that I can use to get to where I need to go. And if something did happen, how am I going to move the person with me? Is it my kids? Is it my spouse? Is it an elderly person with an injury? Things like that. So those are the things, again, that should be going through your mind ahead of time,
Hmm.
because it's a little late when you're in the middle of the incident.
Right. And avoiding it in the first place is always your win-win situation. If you can
Uh,
avoid it and get out of there, then that's your best case scenario. And so that's part of being ahead of that reactionary gap as well, as seeing it coming. And I don't know about you, but man, when I sit in a restaurant or I observe people at an airport or wherever I am really in public, I would say a large percentage of people have almost zero awareness of what's going on around them, mostly because of technology, I think.
yeah, you see a lot of, look at, don't take my word for it. Look around the next time you're in public and look at the volume of people stuck on their phones or
Mhm,
involved in a conversation or
mhm,
otherwise unaware of their immediate environment. Just make a comparison yourself and look at that percentage. And then to
mhm.
go back to what you said earlier, yes, the faster you can see something, it puts you ahead of the action reaction power curve. The more time you have, you can create space, you can create opportunity. The earliest warning system, as you mentioned earlier, is your perception. If something doesn't feel right, doesn't smell right, it's probably not right. And it's a good
Mhm.
idea to pay attention to those initial, it's the earliest onboard warning systems that we have as humans, and it shouldn't be disregarded.
Totally agree. I saw a post on Facebook just yesterday. I shared it. Maybe if you guys are friends with me on there, you might have seen it, but it was just a gal warning other people. She said she was at a gas station and she was approached by a man who wanted her to come over to his pump and help him with his card. He didn't know, like, he acted like he didn't know how to use it or anything. I don't know exactly the circumstances, but short version of the story is she got a bad feeling about it. And she mostly because he wanted her to leave where she was and go to his, where he was, where his car was. And she just didn't feel comfortable doing that. And she thought, why is he asking me when he can go inside and get help there? And so it just didn't like, it didn't add up to her. And one of my friends put in the comments that he was bumping her to see what he could get, if he could get her over there. And so could you describe what that is, what that process is, and
Yeah.
how can we mitigate situations like that?
Okay, so first of all, kudos to the female who was able to pick that up. I mean, she went with her. The first thing that hit her was the gut feeling based on the conditions, and it's good. She paid attention to that, and it was accurate. So, there are so many tactics out there. I mean, so many, and they change, daily. And the whole idea is to, look at it as a chess match. They want the tactical advantage to be able to maintain or control you or the environment around you. And so the objective is for you to be the one that control the threat as opposed to the threat controlling you. And one of the examples, I think you may have seen it in the training, was how you have time space around you that's your personal space, let's call it, and you control that personal space, or you relinquish that control to someone else. So the better of the two, what keeps you ahead of that action reaction power curve is you maintaining control of your own personal space.
Right. And another really good point I'd like to bring up too is that especially women are very, they want to be nice.
Sure.
We all want to, and I'm not saying guys aren't nice, but women especially want to be nice and cater to people and help them out. And hey, I want to be nice to people too, and I want to be helpful. But I think that sometimes that the alarm bell systems get kind of squelched in their mind sometimes when they are more concerned about being nice, a nice person. And I think that in some cases that could be to their detriment. And the reason I bring that up is because we don't know what that guy's intentions were. She never found out what his intentions were. She never went and helped him. I don't know the rest of the story. Maybe he was just a dude that needed help with his card reader and he didn't know what to do. Maybe that's the case. So then my question to you is, okay, maybe that wasn't a potentially dangerous situation. Maybe she wasn't walking into a trap. So what, right? I mean, I think that if you're concerned about that, I think you should really be looking more deeply into your safety over your comfort level of being nice to people.
Right. It really is. It depends on uh, the makeup of the person, and I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about another event that occurred some years ago. It was at a strip mall, a shopping mall, where it was closing time at a department store, and there was a female clerk who was in the process of turning the lock, locking the door. And this guy comes up to her in a very nice looking suit, knocks on the door and says, "Hey, it's my wife's birthday. I can't, I need something to buy for her because it's her birthday." And she says, "I'm sorry, sir, the store is closed." And she said she got this gut feeling that told her, do not open that door under any circumstances. That's what later on we found out. So he just kept on her, it's our 5th anniversary. He just kept going. And she overrode her gut feeling with her, what you're talking about, being nice, being polite, and she goes, well, he is in a business. So she started then to reason with herself and talked herself out of her initial gut feeling. And she let him in, and it was a brutal beating, and she was in intensive care and barely survived it. And the moral of the story is, listen to your gut feeling. Don't override it with being nice.
And the other thing too is that a lot of criminals are really good at at they're very charismatic sometimes. They're very good at what they do, and they may not look the part, right? Some of them do, but wouldn't you say some don't? And that's part of why they're so good at what they do.
Yeah, yeah. There's been many incidences in the past where serial killers wearing 3-piece suits. Very common.
That's why that gut feeling is so important, I think.
It is. It is. It's something you don't want to ignore. I mean, we all have it as humans, and you mentioned this earlier. Women have a much higher level of it, a higher level of perception, but men have it as well.
Is
And
that a scientific thing, Steve, that women have? Or is that just something like widely believed? Do you know?
I don't know if there's a science behind it. almost 40 years, and being on assignments and involved in different things, and the female agents usually pick it up way faster than the males. They're more attuned to their environment, and as far as sensory perception, it operates at a higher frequency. It's been my observation.
Well, you would know. So let's see. I have one more question here. Where did it go before we get into some of the resources that we can introduce to people? And here it is. Oh, hey, Adam, did you have something to add?
Yeah, if I can jump in here. Steve, you just
Sure.
said something very interesting, I thought is just so pertinent to this. You mentioned that you find that it's ladies that seem to attune to this a lot better than guys. A question here from my observation, it seems like because ladies have been, they've been ogled most of their lives, as they get older, and they've been picked on by people. They have guys staring at them all the time. And ladies watch ladies, right? It seems like because ladies have been looked at, and oftentimes because they become the victims of crime, they develop a radar system for this far better than most guys. It sounds like you just said the same thing, I think. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, I believe that, just like we had mentioned earlier, that it's just like a muscle. The more you use it, the more defined it gets, and women probably use it more than men do, and that's the reason, I would imagine. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, but I can tell you that it is used more often by females than it is by males, and I believe that's the case, where the more you use it, the more refined it gets.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that ladies generally become the victims more easily than guys, right? And guys want to pick on ladies, and man, they just have such an attuned sense that they become extremely good protectors sometimes, where guys were sometimes a little bit oblivious. I'll jump out.
Okay. So, Steve, the next thing I wanted to ask you is, and before we get to the resources, is I have a lot of friends who travel quite frequently, and they're usually by themselves, especially women that I know. And so, on their behalf, I'd like to ask you, is there any advice that generally that you could give people that are traveling a lot, or in motels, or a lot at convenience stores, that kind of thing, for those people that aren't carrying a gun with them, what can they do to help keep themselves safe on the road?
Okay, good. So looking at it again from 30,000, you want to look at the whole scenario. Where are you? What are you doing? Look at your environment. Is it a high threat environment? Is it a low threat environment? Adjust your expectations, your awareness, your baseline as according to your environment. Of course, those are some good first steps. In addition to that, realize that your options are to exit or equalize. That is, get out of there, get yourself off the X, or get something in your hand that's going to equalize the situation. And since the great equalizer is a firearm, and you don't have one, then if you don't have a ballistic weapon, then your only other option is a non-ballistic weapon. You'd have to grab something nearby, like a chair or an umbrella, whatever happens to be near you, to be able to use that. But better than that, staying and playing and engaging with what could be a potentially high volatile threat would be to get yourself out of there as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. So, just small ideas like that you can keep in your repertoire as you change your environments.
And I would say simple things like, when you're pulling into a convenience store parking lot, just look at what's going on in the parking lot. Look at the people. before you go in the store, if you can see through the window, pay attention to what's going on inside the store. When you open the door, look around. A lot of people are beelining for the bathroom at the
Right.
gas station, and they're not paying attention to anything going on around them. And what if there's something going down in there that you're just not aware of because you're just not paying attention? It's a very simple thing, but it's really kind of funny that a lot of people just don't pay attention. They just don't look. So
the someone just put in about the pepper ball pistols as a non-lethal option. Those are very viable. They're very effective, and I'm a believer in those. And some of the protective assignments that I go on, those are readily available in an environment where we're not allowed to have a firearm. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
And
I
Laura,
would say
to get
pepper
back,
spray too.
oh yeah, to get back to your point there, yes, there is the do's and the don'ts. Do look at your environment. If there's a gunfight going on in front of your department store, you're not going to go in there. If the roof is on fire, or if it's flooded, or doesn't have to be an active threat. It could be any natural disaster, anything like that, or a protest forming up in front of where you need to go, or something along those lines. And then there's the do nots. Here's some do nots. Do not pull up to a convenience store, regardless of the neighborhood. Leave your door open, the engine running, keys in the car, your purse open with cash hanging out of it as you run in to go to the bathroom.
Do people do that?
Oh my goodness, yes. I've been on the road for over 3 decades. I've seen it all, and that's very common.
Wow.
And it's a miracle that the car and everything else is still there when they get out.
Wow, that never even crossed my mind that needed to be said out loud.
Well, somebody like you who has the training in the background, yes, but there are folks that don't have the training, don't have the background, don't think anything of, oh, it's a safe neighborhood. Well,
right.
Take a look around and let's look at what we consider a safe neighborhood now compared to a safe neighborhood, say 10 years ago.
Yeah. The other thing that I don't know, maybe it's crazy, but I think it's smart, honestly, is I see a lot of people when they come out of a grocery store, for example, they load their groceries, they get in their car, they shut the door. The first thing they do is they grab their phone and look at their phone. And for me, trying to think of that as a criminal, for example, to me, that seems like a really great opportunity just to open that door without them having any, I saw they just got in. The door's unlocked now because they just got in, and I can get them out and steal the car or whatever they want to do.
Or even worse, if you're a predator or, an opportunist, a criminal, whatever, you see this, you pop open the door. She's just put the seatbelt on. Both of her hands are occupied. She can't move. She isn't aware of it. By the time her mind registers that the door is open, he's already 2 steps ahead, and she's so far behind the power curve. So like you said, it's that
just lock your door. When you get in the car, just lock your door. It's a very simple, easy thing to do.
Follow the basics. And now as we move into the holiday season here in late November and December, the shopping, there's a lot more shopping. There's a lot more criminal activity. The op tempo is moved up a little bit. And these guys are looking for that type of stuff. They're looking for soft targets. They're looking for the lower hanging fruit. And if you appear to be to them a soft target, you're going to draw their attention. The idea is to make yourself as unattractive as possible to the predator.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope that this is helpful to you guys. So we're running out of time. How does this happen so quickly when you're on the show, Steve? So let's get into, for those people who are looking, they're curious to know more about what you're talking about and how they can learn about it. Where can they start to get some resources about this type of training?
Well, open source intelligence, the internet is there's a bunch of stuff on the internet available on it. The stuff that I did, the books that I've written, my book Prefence will be back out again. It was out of print for a while. So it'll be back out again, probably by the end of the year. And then also Your Most Powerful Weapon, another book that has as much information in terms of protective services application. And then I'd like to introduce the newest website. I've been working with several folks on myprefense.com. Laura has it printed up there on the screen, myprefense. There's some good information there, some resources. Take a look at the members of our team. There are various services that are available, and not just through myself and my group, but look at some of that content, look at some of that information, and whether it's through me or through someone else, especially during the holiday season, I would advise to ramp up your soft skills so you don't need to use your hard skills.
Yeah, and I'm so fortunate because I got a sneak peek into the myprefense.com, and I can't remember how many modules there were. There were quite a few. It's pretty extensive training. It's primarily video based, which is my perfect way of learning for me. I'm a very visual learner. And there are assessments throughout the course. It's very well laid out. And I was able to explore a couple different modules recently. And one of the modules that I explored was I got to find it in my notes here. It was controlling fear.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about a couple things on that because what I found about the program is it gives you a really good general broad base of information, but then in appropriate times drills down into more detail, really important stuff. And I really like that because a lot of time when you're getting information it's a lot easier to digest it in that way. And it's broken down very systematically and layers on top of each other throughout the program. The cool thing about it is, first of all, it doesn't cost a ton of money. You can do it in your PJs at home and you can do it at your own pace. So I think, this time of year when people are kind of slowing down a little bit, have a little bit more downtime, it would be a really perfect opportunity to do that. And before I get to the specific question I had about the controlling fear module, did you want to shout out that discount code and then talk about the foundation? Because I don't have anything directly linked from me yet.
Sure. So I recently have been working with Paul Hutchinson, who's the executive director and producer of the movie Sound of Freedom. And the foundation, the Child Liberation Foundation, is Liberating Humanity. Those are his two websites, where there's extensive efforts and work being made and done to promote awareness of human trafficking, as well as education, things that can be done to preventive measures and things like that. And I'm a strategic partner with the organization for folks that are looking for training. What can we do? How can I keep my family safe? What are some things I can do to keep my kids safe and my spouse and my family safe? And Prefense exactly fits that and supports the mission, which is to, as you said earlier, it's far better to avoid than to have to mitigate or defend against, violent physical attack. So best answer, don't be there in the first place. Know what to look for. Put yourself out of danger before you're even in it.
Absolutely. And we're almost to the end of the show, guys. So if you have questions for Steve, now is the time to drop those in the comments and we will get to those here shortly. One last thing before we get to that, though. Okay, so in your controlling fear module of myprefense.com, you were talking about proactive and reactive ways that people can control fear. First, before I dig into those and ask the question, what's the difference between proactive and reactive?
In terms of fear? Do you mean in terms of fear or in general?
Of controlling fear, yes.
Okay. So
specifically to controlling fear?
okay. So um, you're in a situation, and there's this concern that you would be frozen with fear. That's a common term. Most people, they don't know, because if they've never been in a situation, am I going to freeze? It's a good question, right? How do you know if you've never been there, right? So it's a very lengthy, as you know, it's an involved conversation, and there's lots to this. But the general overview is that reactively, if you find yourself in a situation and you feel that freeze coming on, the frozen with fear, you can react to that with what we call reactive measures, and then the opposite is, before you end up in a situation, you can run it through your brain, your mind, in the theater of your mind. And as you run it through the theater of your mind, now your mind has seen this already. And it's no longer new. It's no longer unfamiliar. There's nothing we can do about the threatening piece of it. But if you can remove or mitigate the newness and the unfamiliarity, those are the things that free you up proactively. So what are some examples? That would be training, or reading, or articles, or YouTube videos, something along those lines, where you can prepare yourself for an event that you may find yourself into, and just by simply reading about it, thinking about it, any type of a level of information you can receive on that will decrease the newness and the unfamiliarity, and so to say, thaw out that potential for freeze proactively.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So then I found this to be very interesting. One of the ways that you talked about being reactively able to control fear is with humor.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why so many military guys and law enforcement guys have like so much humor going on all the time? It's like a coping mechanism or something. I don't know.
I don't know if that's the reason, but that's an astute
They
observation.
all have a good sense of humor, I think.
Yeah, it's very common. It's been well documented. I don't have the references right in front of me, but several books discuss the psychological aspect of that. But again, I'm not a psychologist. However, just from observations in the field, and being around folks that I've worked with that are very good at their jobs, and some of the things I've seen, it's you're in a nasty situation, and you try and find the humor in it, make a joke out of it, and what it does is just kind of relieves the pressure from the situation, and allows your mind to, you're there to go to work, so you do your job, so to speak, in those situations.
So never lose your sense of humor, guys. That's the moral of the story. Never lose your sense of humor.
That's a very good observation, and an accurate assessment of the bunny holes. That's exactly how this program is put together. You have the 30,000-foot view, you have the cursory explanation, and then as you get deeper into the subject matter, it drills down specific to that topic. And some people want to know that. Some people want to get in that deep. I always get. I'm often, I receive admonitions from folks that say, well, I just want to know what time it is. I don't want to know how the clock works. Yeah. Okay. But here's the deal.
Some people do.
If the clock breaks, you need to know how to fix it. Right.
Yeah.
So, to me, take what you want. I look at that whole training thing as a buffet. Take what's useful to you, take that fits your operational profile, and leave the rest. If it's too much information, you don't want it, don't take it. I think, it's like going to a buffet. I'll have the chicken, some rice, but no green beans, that kind of.
You better eat your vegetables, Steve. Okay. So there's another one here, another question I have. Maybe it's too deep. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I also find this interesting. And I don't know, Adam, I don't see any questions starred. So I don't know that we have any yet. So let me just, no, not yet. Okay, guys. Steve Tarani is here live, and you don't have any questions for him. Is that because we went over every possible question you could have already? I don't know. but take advantage of this opportunity. So the last thing I want to ask is, it said about proactively controlling fear. It talked about fear inoculation, which makes total sense. Stress inoculation we talk about all the time in firearms instruction, and changing your perspective, which makes sense as well. But what really got me was where it says to detach from your emotions. And I see that valuable. I understand why that's important. I'm not sure I know how. I'm not sure I know the how behind that. And then the other question that popped in my mind is, if we have people in these professions where they're having to control fear on a daily basis and they're
Mhm.
detaching from their emotions a lot and they're really good at it, do you think that on the other side of that, that could ever be a negative thing? Where, do you know what I'm saying? Do you get where I'm going with that? That maybe they've been trained to detach from their emotions, and then when they go home and they need those, because yeah, you're detaching from the fear emotion, but you're also detaching from everything else that are good emotions. Or am I reading this wrong? Am I diving too deep here?
Well, I mean, its application, if we stay in the context of the application of it,
Mhm.
think about, I'm just making this up, a first responder who sees, I'm just making this up, 10 fatal car accidents a week. Well, they have to do their job, and they
Right,
can't let their emotions get in the way of that. And,
right,
after a while, it's like, oh, there's another incident. It starts to, we use the word inoculation. That's exactly what it is. It's
right.
become inoculated to it, and justfully so. It's their job, and they need to perform at their optimal level, of performance in that
Mhm.
job. And it's one of those things that it goes with the territory, so to speak.
Yeah. I guess I was just thinking about the other side of that, that if they didn't reattach to the emotions, I guess, after the fact, if they were just so good at always being emotionally disconnected, that could maybe be a harmful thing when they come home later. I don't know. That's probably for a different guest. Am I right?
You would need a psychologist for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see if I can find one of those I'll bring on the show. Okay. So let me see here. We've got a question from Haven Defense Company. He wants to know, I assume that it is Brent and not Marissa, but either way, other than yours, what is the number one book that you recommend to help build soft skills?
Okay. I'm going to say one of the ones there's many, and I'm not going to use the word best, but I'm going to say one of the resources I would recommend would be Left of Bang by
Mm,
Jason Riley. It's the Marine Corps hunter killer program, and it goes into details on what Laura mentioned earlier in terms of body language, indicators based on human reactions and things like that. So it's a pretty good read, and they go into detail on defining what is left of bang and how to stay there.
mhm. Perfect. Have you ever read, or do you have an opinion about the Gavin de Becker book, The Gift of Fear?
Oh yeah, I've read that. Yeah, yeah. It
That
has.
might be a resource as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a good one. Yeah, good information. It covers. There's a lot of overlap in all these references because we're all kind of talking about the same thing, but from different
Hmm.
perspectives. And I
Hmm.
look at it like, you're holding this object in your hand. And if you look at it from this way, and if you look at it from that way, you look at it from the bottom and from the top, as many different perspectives as you can get. I'm a big believer in that. I always tell my students, look at different sources, train with other teachers, work with other
Hmm.
instructors, because the more, uh, the greater your viewpoints of this thing you're trying to understand, the greater your understanding of it.
Yep. And you can never stop learning. And my dog's barking. My apologies. So my husband was working late tonight. I think he just came in the door. Um, So that's really good information. Now, if people want to learn more about you, buy your books, or go to get more training, then they would go to stevetarani.com and myprefense.com. And did you give out that discount code already, or did I miss that?
You were doing the beta test for it. We don't actually have the real codes yet because it doesn't go
Oh,
live. Doesn't go
I'm
live for a
sorry.
couple more days. So,
Oh, okay.
but
Whoopsie.
we'll be up by the weekend, and the site is of course live, but the codes will be activated this weekend.
Okay. So I might be able to go put those back in the show notes after the fact then once we get those. That might
Sure.
be something we
As
can
soon,
do.
I don't
Yeah.
even have them. When I get them, I'm happy to pass them on.
Okay, perfect. So be looking for that.
I'll tell you what, though, what you can do, even if we fail in our mission objective to provide those codes, you can go to the liberatinghumanity.com, Liberating Humanity. That website will offer those codes through the Prefense system. So you can get them there.
Okay, perfect. And could you refresh people's memories about, I know you've written 9 books, so you probably off the top of your head, I don't know if you can remember all the titles, but what are some of the titles of your books that people could go look for?
There's one, I'm well known for the Karambit, which is a curved blade, and that's one of the knives, one of the books. And there's another one that's about knives, and it's all of them are listed on my website. So it's on one page if you want to just take a quick look, and they're all, as far as I'm aware, still available. So
perfect. Awesome. Well, let me make sure there's no other questions. Oh, we got another one here. Graham wants to know how to energize the beginning of a conversation to help females to soft skill situational awareness. Stay out of the white. So I think he's talking about the color codes.
Yeah. Energize the beginning of a conversation. When I do lectures and I do presentations for organizations, I always start with some facts. Start throwing out some facts. 1 out of every 10 people, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And when it's difficult to argue a fact because it can be looked up, it can be referenced. Especially if you cite your sources, which I do, and that way it kind of brings their attention to, okay, yeah, there is really a problem here, and in fact, there's statistics about that. So it just kind of brings energy, brings attention, brings focus to the topic.
And so then, what was he referring to about staying out of the white? Could you talk to?
He was referring to Colonel Jeff Cooper's what they call the color codes. Jeff Cooper was the founder of Gunsite Academy, where I'm an employee, and he developed how he codified 4 conditions of human awareness, and he assigned a color or a color code to represent each of those conditions. So white would be at the lowest, where you're at home, you're watching TV, you've got bars on the windows, electric fences, hot, you got 2 underfed Dobermans, a pallet of ammo, the alarm is set, you're pretty comfortable, you don't have to have too high of an awareness. Then when you pop your melon out of the bunny hole and go out there into the real world, and you got to raise up to condition yellow, which is your general but relaxed awareness of what's going on around you. Kind of the stuff we were talking about on our entire interview here, having that low level, minimal background level of awareness. And if you see a specific threat, something looks out of place, then you would raise your awareness to 1 more notch up on the awareness scale. And that would be, let's say, to that guy who asked for you to come over to look at his credit card at the gas station. That would be an example of that. And if someone just came out, running towards you with a baseball bat, that's condition red, you're in the fight. So those are the 4 codes: white, yellow, orange, and red. And those are the conditions of our awareness as codified by Colonel Cooper.
Is black one of those 2, or is that not in his color codes?
Well, Cooper was as far as I'm aware, was the originator of the conditions, After he had published those were adopted by various agencies, Department of Defense, many, if not all, law enforcement internationally, and each of the individual organizations and agencies added or changed it or put their own flavor on it. So you may be, I'm pretty sure one of the DoD components, I want to say SOCOM, may have added black at a certain point, but the baseline is 1 through 4 comes from Google.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I never knew that. I learned something new tonight.
Yeah.
I learned more than one thing new, but yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Steve, we are over the hour here. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
Yeah, just one. As we enter into the holiday season, lots more activity in that sector, and they're out there, and they look at things from their perspective, and if they view you as a soft target, you become eligible to get on their list. And I would recommend just doing those things that make you unattractive to the predator.
Very good. Well, thank you so much again for your time and all of your expertise that you bring to the table. You're always a great guest to have on. Really appreciate you, Steve.
It's my privilege and pleasure, Laura. Thank you for having me on. And Adam, good to see you, buddy.
He's got his dog with him. All right. So we're going to move on here, and I'm going to tell you what to expect for next week. Before we get to that, I just want to give out a huge thank you to all of my supporters at locals.com. Locals.com is where I post all of my Defenders Uncensored series. And there I have roundtable discussions with some pretty interesting people and conversations I can't really have on YouTube or Facebook. We'll just put it that way. There's a lot of humor, a lot of truth, and some really enlightening information and conversations. I invite you to go over there. I just dropped, I think it was episode 5 recently. I think the title of that episode was called Saying It Out Loud. And we talk about a lot of different things in that episode. So I invite you to go over to locals.com. If you go to the Discover tab and search up Defenders Live, you will find it there. Next week, we are going to have somebody else, and it wasn't planned this way, but one of the lead trainers at Gunsite Academy, Lou Gosnell. And I'm really looking forward to interviewing Lou. I took one of his classes in 2020. It was one of my first formal gun training classes there at Gunsite, and had a really good time, learned a lot. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. He has an extensive law enforcement military background to bring to the table, and a really awesome dry sense of humor that I think you'll find fun as well. If you have any particular topics or questions that you'd like me to ask Lou, you can email me at laura@defenders-usa.com. My first name is spelled LORA @defenders-usa.com. Looking forward to seeing all of you beautiful people again next week, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, next week on Wednesday. Until then,